Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Select meeting. It is April 27th, and we have everyone on tonight on the Zoom and also on conference call. So I will read to you. The meeting is now open. I will read to you. Pursuant to the governor's order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, paragraph 20, as well as the select board's emergency order dated 3/16/2020, the state, the board committee name, will be using remote participation for this meeting. The audio of this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the town webpage within 24 hours in accordance with the governor's emergency action requirement of keeping the public informed of actions during this meeting. I would ask that all participants remotely attending this meeting, please state your name for identification purposes each time you speak throughout the meeting, as well as your address would be nice. At this time, a roll call of attendance will be taken. Mrs. Hine.
Here. Hi.
Mr. Cronin.
Here.
And I am here, Mark Aronian. Thank you very much, and I believe that takes care of the governor's order. Going on to the agenda, we would like a community update from Chief Cassidy, if you would be so kind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Cassidy from the Fire Department, also the Emergency Management Director. Update since our last meeting when I updated the board on Thursday evening. We are now up to 30 positive cases in the town of Holliston, with 16 having recovered, 1 fatality. That leaves us with 13 active cases at this time. Also, I will note that we have seen an increase in the long-term care facilities in town, both among employees as well as residents. And that's it for the quick snapshot.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the community that might help out with the situation?
It would be very helpful if anytime people go out, if they would wear face coverings in accordance with the CDC guidance. This includes not only when they're out doing errands and those essential businesses such as going to grocery stores and pharmacy to pick up prescriptions, but also when they are along the rail trail or when they're along the sidewalk out getting some exercise with their family.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Moles on the conference call, our health director?
Yes, I am. I agree that we need to have more mask use in the community, especially at this plateau stage, and be more diligent about it.
Is there a supply if a resident is having difficulty with financial things at the moment? Is there a supply that we could let them have a mask? Do we have enough to do that if we?
I could give out a couple masks if they need masks. We have given out some to restaurants to give. I gave out some to the Superette. We've given them out through the COA, so it's gone out that way through that areas. Central Cafe, I gave a half a box to this afternoon. But again, if you think you need a mask, let me know and send me an email, and we'll make arrangements to get you a mask.
Okay, so that's the health director, Scott Moles. If you need a mask, you can call him or email him, and he'll do the best he can.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And we'll make sure.
Mr. Chairman, Chief Cassidy again, just a reminder, we do also have on the town website directions on how to make your own mask that would comply with CDC guidelines.
Great, thank you. And just wanted to thank the fire department. I know there were some members that went and provided a mask to each resident at Cold Court, and it was a big hit. I heard a lot from them how they thought that was a wonderful thing for your department to do. So thank you.
Absolutely.
And as we go through the agenda, I'll be asking the secretary clerk of the select board if she has any thoughts, and I'll ask Vice Chair John Cronin if he has any thoughts, and then I'll voice my opinion. So you'll still get the three opinions of your Board of Select, even though we're doing this in response to the virus. You still will get the three opinions. So any questions from Tina concerning the coronavirus, or anything you'd like to say?
Just one point of clarification and then one question. Chief Cassidy, it's an advisory or an order. Could you clarify that in terms of wearing coverings, face masks rather, out in public? An advisory or an order?
So currently it is an advisory, and it is a strong recommendation.
Okay.
I do plan on discussing with the Board of Health tomorrow evening whether or not they want to make that more restrictive, but at this time it is still just an advisory and a recommendation.
And that if it were to progress to an order, that would come from the Board of Health and or the Select Board?
That would, as an action in relation to a public health emergency, it would be coming from the Board of Health.
Thank you. Okay. And then the question I have is, given the governor's conference today and the announcements of the increased support for nursing homes, how does that impact Holliston? Specifically, are we going to see mobile testing perhaps at our nursing home facilities? Are we going to see that required testing of staff and residents that he mentioned in today's conference? Do you have any information that you could share on that?
I would defer to Director Moles, because I know he's actually had conversations with the state with regards to testing at our long-term care facilities.
Okay, thanks.
They are going to be scheduling to come in as they get other facilities in priority that have more positives than us. And then they'll be working to other long-term facilities, and they're also going to be going out to group homes also that have got employees and or staff that have group positives.
So we should anticipate in Holliston that will be happening in the near future, although not right away because our numbers aren't high enough, sort of. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you're not going to see the National Guard coming in, but there's probably somebody that comes in as a nurse with a schedule to come in and do the testing.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Tina. John, any questions?
Just a couple. Good evening, Chief. I was going to ask about your interactions with the Board of Health. I understand they're meeting tomorrow night at 7:00. And you've mentioned that you intend to talk with them about a policy or a directive from their board regarding face coverings. Can you tell us any other items on your agenda to discuss with them, if not make any other further recommendations related to COVID?
So my other discussion with them would also consist of their use of the state funds with regards to replenishing supplies, in addition to the contracted services that they've been using.
Do you happen to have a status of that state account, Mike?
I'm not sure, other than the utilization for the hourly rate for the nursing consultant. I'm not aware that any of the rest of the money has been obligated at this point.
Are you making any recommendations to that board tomorrow night?
Yes, that we backfill and replace the supplies that we've already used.
So you are not going to make a recommendation on face coverings?
Oh, I will be making that. I will be making that recommendation to them, given that several communities in our region have already made that policy, and it would be my recommendation based on the 66% increase that I've seen since last Monday.
And can you articulate what that recommendation is? Be very clear, thank you.
Of course, yeah. No, my recommendation would be that for anyone who goes out in public, outside of their home, that they would be wearing a face covering, especially if they're not going to be able to maintain physical distancing.
Would there be any penalties associated with that, Mike?
That's why my recommendation would be that it would be a Board of Health action, because then the penalties would be enforceable by the Board of Health as well as the state or local police.
Scott Moles, I believe you're on the call.
Yeah.
Do you have any insight as to whether or not the Board of Health is pondering this recommendation?
They're aware of what's going on in the other communities, and we will be discussing it tomorrow. And the fines can be as up to $300 after the first warning.
Wow.
So they're pondering a fine consistent with what other communities are doing. Is that what you mean, Scott?
That's what Somerville just put out as being one of the first communities. They've allowed. Well, their vote was the masks in all public places, and then the first time is a warning, and as allowed by the state directive to make the second happen up as high as $300.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a statement on this, I want it to be known that I do not support any fines associated with any directive that may come from the town associated with the mask. I think it's a public health issue. People should follow it. It's a directive. However, I think the fine is too punitive and frankly unenforceable during a time when we should be acting on good faith and not penalizing individuals who may not fall in line with this for any variety of reasons. I think the punitive side of it is unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from the conference call that would like to ask questions to either Chief Cassidy or our Health Director, Scott Moles? Say your name, please, and your address, and then you may ask a question. No? Okay. Will there be a time frame for ordering these masks, given in conjunction with the order, Scott, to give people a little time?
Most everybody's been giving a 48-hour or 72-hour lead time from the time the board votes. So
Okay.
I would anticipate if they voted tomorrow or choose to vote something along that lines, we'd be making it effective probably Friday.
Okay. Thank you both for your report and update. Appreciate it very much. Public comment. Tina?
Yeah, I just wanted to share another update from the food pantry. They're now serving about 140 families. Last week, they delivered more than 400 bags of groceries to Holliston families. Doing so, they were relying on fewer than 10 volunteers and 25 drivers. So they're working on a thin staff and doing an amazing job. Please continue, residents, to contact the pantry if you need help. And if you're able to donate, please continue to do so. Number 429-5392 or hollistonpantryshelf.org. All requests for assistance are anonymous, and only your address is needed to qualify for assistance from the food pantry. That's all, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
No public comment at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I just want to comment on the community involvement of our town. I think is outstanding. As I mentioned last week, our town has won national awards for community involvement. We were in contests with, I think something like 55 other cities and towns across the United States, and our Holliston came in first place because of all the different community oriented people in our town who really shine during a time like this. And so it's no wonder why our town won a national award for community involvement. And just to name a few, there not only has the food pantry stepped up immensely, but the residents are sending in donations to the food pantry to answer the call for help. And I'm sure some companies do as well. And the senior center, as Gina mentioned, is delivering hot meals to seniors, and sometimes those hot meals are the only hot meal they have that day. And it's so important for us during this crisis, especially, to take care of our seniors, who are the most vulnerable age group for this particular virus. So it's so nice to see that so many residents are donating to the senior center so that they have more funds with their nutritional program to help seniors. Also, the Lions Club of Holliston, you know, it's just amazing all the things they do to help our town, and how many different other committees and organizations that they help out with throughout the whole year. And then there's just so many others, the Board of Health with all of their advice, and our fire chief has been outstanding. We get so many compliments about his work, and our town administrator has been certainly overloaded with work during this time, and it's not an easy time for his job and his staff. And also, I would like to thank residents. There's been a number of residents who have stepped up. I know that Melissa Casperin and Jennifer Stuckey and several others have teamed up to provide meals for people. And it's that type of community involvement. The Superette has several jars on by the register to collect donations to help seniors with their nutritional program. There's all kinds of people. I can't obviously name them all, but I tried to give you a spread of just how this community is come together for this crisis, and we hear about it, and we want to thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. Is there anyone from the conference call who would like to make a public comment at this time? Okay. We will now accept the report of the town administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a very brief report for you this evening. Again, I just want to reiterate from the town side, the town staff side, I want to recognize the extraordinary efforts of the Holliston Police Department in keeping our citizens safe.
Yeah.
Also from the Holliston Fire Department, who is protecting our properties during this time, and the Holliston Ambulance Service. And the DPW staff, believe it or not. I mean, they're out there doing their thing, and they're continuing to do their thing on a daily basis.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and thank you for adding to my list. Like as I said, you can't remember everyone, but you named some very important ones.
And also the town hall staff, we're on a very, very bare bones staffing model at the moment. We have about one person in every office. The town hall remains closed to the public, but we still have to pay our bills, and we still have to pay our staff. And I just want to thank those who have put in the extra effort to cover their offices to keep them functional. Finally, the staff down at the senior center for looking after our seniors. This is a really critical and very vulnerable period of time, and they've done an extraordinary job as well. The last thing I have is that next week we're going to start looking at the FY21 budgets again,
right,
for the review of the departments that are under the board. Right. And we may have to have a special session, a second session next week sometime to wrap it up, so we can get all the information to the Finance Committee as they've requested by May 8th. which is Friday.
Sure.
So that's all I have.
Well, very good. Thank you, sir. Does anyone have any questions for the town administrator? Tina?
Jeff, I was just wondering if you could possibly give an update, if you have one, on the status of the pedestrian crossing signals for the golf course. There's been a little bit of conversation about that recently, and didn't know if you had an update on that.
We have about a $16,000 balance from an appropriation. I think it was back in October. We're not going to be able to cover both intersections or both crossways with that amount of money. We have an estimate of approximately $24,000, I believe, to cover both intersections. So we are short. And, you know, you're going to get tired of hearing me say this, but in this economic climate, I'm not sure if that is an essential expenditure of funds. And we probably should protect those funds as best we can for future uses.
Are you making it?
Do you mean?
Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. All right. I mean, do you say that because the golf course is closed right now, that you don't think that it's necessary use of funds?
Well, I'm saying that because we don't know what the future is.
Right.
And we may need that $16,000 for some other purpose to keep a job,
right,
basically. So we just don't know what the future has in store for us at the moment. So I'm being extremely conservative. I'd love to be able to spend the money and get it done. But you know, there are other sources of revenue out there. For instance, the golf course revolving fund might be a source for that purpose, but we're still looking at it. Let's put it that way.
I guess, Jeff, I would just add that when that decision comes to be made, that we pull in the public safety piece of it. You know, obviously the request was made for a reason driven by a concern for safety. So just that we circle back around and have that conversation, bringing in the public safety piece as well as the financial piece. That would be my request when that time comes.
Yep, agreed.
John, any questions for Jeff?
No, to the extent that I would politely disagree with the town administrator. I think if we have funding available, if we have the opportunity to at least address one of the crosswalks, there's no price on safety. We should move ahead and get at least one done, possibly have the Golf Course Advisory Committee prioritize one over the other. That's what I would do at this point, Mr. Chairman.
That sounds like a very good idea, to have the Golf Course Advisory Committee prioritize one over the other and at least get one done. And then there would still be a little money left.
May I make a motion to ask the town administrator to contact the Golf Course Advisory Committee to prioritize the crosswalks to the extent that we may be able to achieve one crossing signal at this time, sir?
Yes, and do we have a second?
Second, with one comment, John, would you consider then asking if the advisory committee would want, the Golf Course Advisory Committee would want to put in the additional funds needed to make it two?
Sure, to the extent that they have available funds, I think that would be worth asking. Absolutely.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Under the open meeting law, you need a roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry, roll call. If you could, roll call, Tina?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Mark, aye. So that's unanimous.
Got it.
All right, Jeff will take care of that. Thank you, John. It's a great idea. Are there any other questions from the conference call for the town administrator? Anything at all? All right, moving on to the financial impact of the COVID-19 situation. I'm sure a lot of the department heads received the letter from the Board of Select and the Finance Committee, as we're very concerned about state cuts and to our town and the detrimental effect that could have on our budget. I do want to point out a couple of things to people so that they understand that we do have a stabilization fund that's got a little over $6 million in it, but don't think for a minute that's a lot of money, because when you compare that to our annual budget for our town of over 60 million, it really only comes to about 9 or 10% of the budget. So then you can kind of see that that's not going to really, that's really not a huge stabilization fund. In fact, some organizations I'm well aware of have a whole year of operating budget for their stabilization fund. But we do have one, and it is helpful. But as pointed out very wisely by Mr. Zaja, our Finance Committee Chair, we could get a second wave of the virus, who knows, and we might need more funds later, and we could also have something else horrible happen. You never know. So we don't want to pretend that it's okay to go spend all this money. It is there to help us, and we'll use some of it to help us, I'm sure. I'm sure that the residents of our town who have the final say on spending at town meeting will wisely want to use some of it, but we'll have a recommendation from the Finance Committee that will be thorough, and they'll go through everything, and we'll, as a select board, also go through everything, as we have numerous amounts of budgets that come under us and will be reporting to us. So we'll look at it, and so, but I don't want people to think that in any way, shape, or form that anyone responsible would go spend all of that, because we may need it in the fall, as I said. But one of our most important things I think we can all agree upon is that our employees are our most important asset to our town. And so we want to try to not have any layoffs later, and to try to support our employees who will support us every day of the week by carrying out their tasks and looking out for this community. So we have a responsibility to do the best we can for them, and I'm sure we all will come together and do that. But we are, as I mentioned, the select board sent out a letter to all of the department heads and committees, and we are in sync with the Finance Committee's recommendations for a 0% budget for 2021. And so all the budgets we've already approved, we'll be re-looking at those, as Jeff mentioned, and trying to keep with the date that the Finance Committee has come up with, which I believe is May 8th. So we're going to try to have an extra meeting so we can accommodate the date that they've requested. So with that, we will have comments from Mrs. Hine.
I have no comments to add at this time.
And Mr. Cronin.
So thanks very much, Mark. I think some of this will be a repeat of what I mentioned last week, but you know, I have no issue with the Finance Committee's approach at this time. I found their directive to be appropriate given the circumstances, but I believe they would agree with the notion that at this time, nobody knows what FY21 is going to look like. The 0% guideline is an exercise. We don't know if that's too much, too little, or just right. Only time will tell. The options in front of the town, I think, are many. The legislature has given us some options to consider even short-term solutions of 1/12 budgets, which might be an option if the financial information available from the state is not clear enough to give us firm footing for even a partial year budget. So I think we need to be mindful that this exercise that the Finance Committee is sponsoring may not be the end. It could just be the beginning of a process that takes us further down a road, possibly with an off-ramp of 1/12 budgets, But we really need the benefit of time, Mark, to judge where these revenue figures are going to go and how the economy is going to respond. Clearly, if the current situation and when you follow the trajectory of revenue, the worst case scenarios that we heard on that Ways and Means conference call a week or two ago could materialize, and we could be reaching depression level economy. And so our reserves that you pointed out will be needed to maintain certain levels of service. I heard members of the Finance Committee talk about the Stabilization Fund, and I frankly agreed with them. I think we need to use the Stabilization Fund conservatively, smartly, and just assure that business in our town gets done without any further expenses that are non-discretionary, and that we try to keep our spending to a minimum. So overall, I'm in support of what the Finance Committee is trying to do, but again, I'm repeating myself. I think it's important that we just keep an eye on the fact that this might not be it, Mark. I think we might be going through a couple more rounds of budgets before everything is done with for FY21. We just don't yet. Thanks.
Yeah, very well. Very well said. We are in treading unknown territory. So we will definitely keep an eye on it, and I'm sure that we'll make the right decisions when the time comes. But I think it was very good that our board initiated a spending freeze, and I think that pretty much sends a message as to how serious we are about protecting the assets of this town and being conservative at this time. Any questions from the conference call audience? Any questions at all? When you ask a question, I'll ask Mrs. Hine to respond, then John, and then myself to answer your questions.
Okay.
So
Mark,
I'll take the first question.
This is Ken Shada, Finance Committee Chair.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Gina. Hi, John. I just wanted to comment, and I guess actually, for the audience at home, I can actually start my video so people can see me. I just wanted to reiterate what John said. I think that was a very important point. A lot of talk about the Stabilization Fund, but I think it's important to remember that the Stabilization Fund really is a bridge and not a panacea, right? So we want to use it when we need to use it. It exists for crises, right? But at the same time, it doesn't exist so that we can pretend the crisis doesn't exist. It's just to help us provide that bridge. Right. So you've seen our recommendation. I'm glad, obviously the Finance Committee is very glad that we're in alignment, that we need to keep tight budget control in the short term. I just wanted to say that we're fortunate that we are in this position in a time of crisis, and that's a result of, I think, through many different finance committees and boards of selectmen over the last decade or so, we've done a very good job of keeping the financial reins tight, running as efficiently as we possibly can. At the same time, trying to maintain the levels of service and that the town expects. And that, as a result of that, we're in this position where now we're facing a crisis, and we're better positioned than most other towns. So I think that it's important that we keep that in mind, right? It's that kind of policy that we've had that has put us in this position. So in the time of crisis, we don't want to let that go out the window either. We want to use the Stabilization Fund if we need to, as little as possible, keep the tight financial reins, and we'll get through this okay. But to Mr. Cronin's point, we still don't know where this is going. And so I think it is very important that we don't just look at fund balances and say, we should just sit back and relax. I think both of our boards are going to have a lot to do over the coming months.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ken. Do you have a question, Tina?
I do. Ken, since we have you on the line here, I just have a question of clarification for you from the memo. There's a reference in the Finance Committee's memo to a state revenue falling of 15 to 20%. And I know that's something to take very seriously and consider. I was just wondering if you could speak to the portion of our budget, of our $65 or so million budget, that is from state revenue versus property taxes, the levy, and local receipts. Could you just kind of break that down?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you some rough numbers. The tax levy typically for FY21, if you're looking at projections for FY21, obviously the tax levy changes year to year. But the tax levy would be just south of $50 million, about $49 million. Okay. State aid in an ordinary year, in fact, in FY20, was $10 million. So roughly let's say one quarter, maybe a little less than the property tax, or I shouldn't say property, the tax levy from the town. Okay. When you look at the kinds of reductions we're talking about, right, a 15% reduction in local aid, which is, if you ask my personal opinion, I'd say very likely. And the reason I say very likely is because in the last recession, which was not nearly as bad a downturn as this is, we saw a 13% reduction in local aid over 2 years. And based on what I saw in the state's revenue call, we've already, shattered those revenue drops. So that's why I said 15, maybe even 20% would not be unheard of. Well, but do the math, right? 15% is going to be about $1.5 million, which is a big hit.
Do you anticipate, what's your feeling, if you don't mind me asking, I know I'm just asking you and not your committee, but what's your feeling on the impact on property taxes for fiscal year 21?
Well, ultimately, the property tax is limited by Prop 2.5, right? So we don't have, when we see a drop off in local aid from the state, we don't have the ability to raise that money simply by shifting it to the property tax, right? So with regards to FY21, if anything, we will see, and again, it's early, we don't know where we're going, we don't know what's going to happen, but based on just numbers alone, the overall tax bill for people will actually go down in FY21 because of the payoff of the schools.
Okay. Thank you.
We had excluded debt that was retired. That doesn't mean the levy went down. That just means that debt retired.
Okay.
But the other thing, one other point that you mentioned, there's also a big chunk of money that's used for the budget that comes from our local receipts, not excluding water, right? So things like the excise tax, fees, permit fees, things like that. And typically when we enter recession, we see drops in those numbers. The good thing is we haven't seen that yet, but it's very early, right? It's all recent.
Yeah.
But I would fully expect, and the Finance Committee is modeling a 10% reduction in local receipts as well that we expect to have.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thanks.
I'm glad you're looking at those receipts as well. That's important. 10% is a lot. John, do you have any questions for Ken?
I was just going to point out the largest piece of that local receipt that is so economically volatile is the new growth number. That will definitely take a hit in FY21. It's indicative of the kind of new values people build into their homes every year and other factors that were not picked up in the tax rate. When time's going well, the new growth numbers jump. When money gets tight and jobs become more difficult to find, the new growth numbers follow. That number is going to take a hit in FY21. I know the Finance Committee's looking at that too.
Yeah. Just to be clear, John, just for clarity here, when I was talking about local revenue, that actually did not count new growth. You're completely correct that new growth, for those of you who follow us at the Finance Committee's reports at town meeting, we always model new growth near the bottom end of expectations because it's so volatile. And we looked back at the recession of 2008 and 2009, and there was a huge drop off. I mean, I think I don't have the number on the top of my head, but I think it was somewhere in the order of 60% or so, if not more than that, went during the bottom of the recession. So yes, we are also expecting a new growth hit, but we've modeled that as well.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Anything else, John?
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take questions from the conference call now, and just state your name and your address, please. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Zaja, for all the information. I think you answered a lot of folks' questions. Much appreciated your thoroughness and going through all the different scenarios. They do all have a trend of adding up. So
Yes.
we appreciate it immensely. Okay, we will now move on to board business. Review of the annual town meeting warrant, Jeff?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think next week on your agenda, you're going to have a discussion about the annual town meeting date. And we'll include and the election also.
Right.
So we'll link in or invite Liz to be participating in that discussion in terms of the warrant.
Yes.
And we're also going to need to lean on Chief Cassidy a little bit. A decision doesn't have to be made immediately. However, I'm cognizant of the spread, the community spread, and putting 100 people in an auditorium with a virus out there. So we're going to have an initial kind of discussion about the warrant next week.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll know more information from the governor by then too, which will help us make a decision.
Yeah, I hope so. Yep.
Safety has to come first.
But the warrant is still a work in progress, and we're continuing to massage it and add in information and fill in the holes. But this will be a recurring item on your agenda for the next several weeks.
Okay, thank you. Tina, any questions?
Just, Jeff, confirming that it is 30 days before town meeting that we have to change the date? Is that what you were referring?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe so. Yep. And right now, town meeting is forecasted to start on June 15th.
Right. Okay. So about two and a half weeks before.
So we got a couple weeks to make a decision here.
Thanks.
So it's good to have it on the agenda for next week and discuss it.
Yep.
And it may be that we need to go toward the end of June for our annual town meeting. We'll see. We'll have a lot more information in the next week or so.
You have a lot of latitude through the governor's order or directive to change the date of town meeting. It could be in August. Maybe it's in October. I hope not, but I mean,
All right, John. Any questions for Mr. Rich?
No, I think Tina was going where I was going, which is the governor is likely to revisit his declaration of emergency, which I believe expires next Monday. And in the event that he extends it another month or so, I think we should take some advice on where that will trend for public gatherings, shortly thereafter. So,
Right.
I think there is no guarantee right now that town meeting will occur on the date that we've selected. We hope it does, but the way things are trending, it may go out a little bit, Mark, to my point earlier.
I have a feeling it's reasonable to expect that it will go out further. But we'll see.
Let's take all the time we need to make that decision.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions from the conference call for our town administrator? All right. The town administrator screening committee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As you recall, last week the board made 7 appointments to the town administrator screening committee on Monday. On Tuesday morning, we sent out appointment letters to all the 7 and copied Paradigm Associates, Bernie Lynch, on that. He asked me today for the email addresses for all the 7, which I provided to him today as well.
Great.
So we are well underway. I know that the position has been advertised.
Yeah.
And I think that the response date is May 22nd, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and check on that since I'm not applying for the position.
Right. You're going to really deserve this retirement when you finally get it after this crisis.
Yeah, we'll have a talk about that later. So anyway, it appears that the committee is up. It hasn't met yet. It hasn't been posted yet, but the appointments have been made, and the committee is ready to get going. As soon as the resumes come in and the letters of interest come in, then I'm sure that Mr. Lynch and the committee will meet together and get going.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions about that, Tina?
No, just hoping that the 7 who were appointed last week have confirmed their interest. I know that they need to come in or they need to take care of some business with the town clerk to be official on the committee, but I'm hoping we haven't heard from anybody that they're no longer interested. So can you confirm whether or not we've heard back from the 7 that were appointed?
We've heard from one individual who questioned the mission after the appointment, after they submitted their letter of interest and their resume to be considered for appointment, and the appointment was made. We received a inquiry as to what the exact mission was of that committee, and I sent out to that individual the next day the mission statement or the committee profile and committee charge, and I have not heard back.
So we should still assume that 7 ready to go.
We have, as far as to my understanding, we have 6 definite and 1 maybe.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. John, any questions?
No, I'm just really very happy with the quality of the candidates we selected last week. I just wanted to make sure that the other individuals that applied, Jeff, that were not selected, get a very kind letter of thanks from us for their willingness to serve. And perhaps in the event that we have a vacancy early on in this process, we might look back at some of them to backfill any vacancies that may occur. But I'm hoping they get some correspondence as well.
Yes, it's on my to-do list.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the conference call about the Town Administrator Screening Committee? Okay. Moving on, year-end transfers.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is a recurring item on your agenda now until probably July 15th, I think it is. I've been in communication with our town accountant, and she said that she would have a list to me by Thursday of this week. So next week on the agenda, we can start taking on these transfers.
Okay, very good. Yeah, they have to be voted on.
Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you. So that's not going to be for our next meeting to start voting on them. It'll be the meeting after that.
Well, you can start next week.
Oh, you think it'll be? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any questions regarding the year-end transfer, Tina?
No, none.
John?
I'm good. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Anyone from the audience have a question about year-end transfers? All right. We're going to any other business? Tina, you had a couple of things.
Yeah, the 9 Green Street Committee is going to meet tomorrow, Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So on the agenda is a discussion of next steps, probably preparing for town meeting. So I'll have an update next week on that meeting that we're having tomorrow. And then I wanted to just point out that Chief Stone has drafted an advisory memo for Lowland Industrial Park truck traffic for the businesses down there. He submitted it today as a draft, and I think it's something that, Jeff, you could have on the agenda for next week for us to discuss, and then potentially have a motion to approve for distribution to the businesses. I think that this is something we want to move forward on. So again, Chief Stone has a draft of a memo that an advisory memo for Lowland Industrial Park businesses that I'd like to see on the agenda if possible for a discussion next week.
Yep.
And if we could invite Chief Stone for the conference call for next week's meeting in case there's questions. Thank you.
And then one more.
Oh, I'm
Mark,
sorry,
if I-
John. She had one thing. Yes,
Tina,
sir.
I'm sorry. Tina, I don't mean to cut you off, but to your point, I believe we also asked through the town administrator to get legal counsel to explore any other authority that our board might have to take immediate action on the roads involved to secure their safety until and if the planning board and any other advisories take effect. In other words, grateful for Chief Stone for the advisory, but I want to see if there's any emergency action or authority we have that we can take to the benefit of the residents up there and their safety.
All right, Jeff, you do that for us?
As soon as I see the memo, yep.
Okay.
Okay, and then there was one other item for new business that I wanted to bring up, and it's about an article for the town warrant to establish a revolving fund for the sustainability coordinator position. So just wanting a little more direction or input on where we stand with that and how to move forward to get a draft for review for the warrant. We have one in there. Article 24 is an article to create a revolving fund for the Community Farm Committee. And I think the language just needs to be slightly edited, and we could probably use the same type of language for the revolving fund for the sustainability coordinator. And wanted to hear what you had to say, Jeff, if you have any thoughts on that, or maybe you've already drafted one. Not sure.
Yeah, I'll have something for you next week.
Do you want Tina to help you with that? Draft something?
I can draft it and send it to her.
Okay, great. John, can you send a memo to Jeff for what you described?
How about an email? Is that sufficient?
Yeah.
Yeah, very well. Yep, no problem.
Okay. Anything else, Tina?
No, that's it.
That was it?
Yeah.
John, anything for?
No, I'm good.
I have one thing, just wanted to bring people up to speed. I saw the septic committee chair the other day, Paul Saunier, who was very kind to chair this for us, being an engineer in town, is very valuable. And Scott Moles has been very helpful too. And but anyway, he just got back the plans that he was waiting for. And so the test results at the Congregational Church that were done over the winter worked out well, the ground testing. And now he has the plans, and so he can get pricing now, which would be a really good thing. Because as you know, right now, our septic system at Town Hall has failed, and we have to keep an eye on it and pump it all the time and that sort of thing. But we didn't have a lot of options of where a new septic system could be put in field as well. So it was very kind of the Congregational Church to be amenable to the idea. And so we'll be getting more information soon from Paul's committee. And I do think it's something that we would want to open the warrant for the spring, because as much as we don't want to be spending money right now, this is a health concern for our town. And unfortunately, when the remodeling was done in 2001, it was recommended back then by the health department to put in a new one, but it wasn't done. The committees worked hard, and they checked with the affordable housing up the hill from Town Hall to see if there was extra storage capacity to maybe pipe into theirs, but there wasn't. And looking into running a pipe all the way to the Adams School from Town Hall is a little better than a mile, and that cost would be quite a bit, well over $1 million to do that route, and it would be quite a disruption. And there is wetlands along the way, and it would have to go down Linden Street, which the grade goes down, and so then you'd have to pump it back up into Adams School. So it'd be quite a project to do it that way. The other option was the historical building at the end of the town hall parking lot is for sale, but they want an arm and a leg for it. But that was an option. The building was looked at, and it needs a ton of work. So it costs a lot to buy it. There's quite a few acres there, and then the town would have yet another building, and there is room there that you could put 2 septic systems, one for that historical home and one for town hall. But again, we're looking at a very, very expensive cost to do that. So this option of putting it right across the street at the congregational front yard area, opposite of their own, on the opposite side of their front walkway. There is enough room there, and the soil testing came out good, and now we have the plans. So the committee's going to work hard to try to get some numbers together, and my thinking is we should try to do this this spring if we possibly can. But we'll keep you up to date. I just wanted to fill you in as to what I know so far. Questions, Gina?
None, thank you, Mark.
John?
No, just to throw some compliments your way, Mark. You've been a steward of that project from the beginning, and you've stayed on it. And I also want to thank Paul for all the work he's done on it. The remedy is much needed, obviously, for the safety of the people that work there, but also remember that is a revenue center for the town. The Upper Town Hall has been mothballed until this matter is addressed, and subsequently we're not collecting revenue from the event. So as soon as it's fixed, we can back in business. And I just want to thank you again for keeping us on the front burner of problems to fix, Mark. Thanks.
Absolutely. Anyone from the conference call wish to have any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. And that's all I have for any other business. Does anyone else have any other business on the conference line as well? Anyone at all? Okay. I do want to mention one other thing, and I understand that the newcomers club has made a donation to the Park and Rec, and that'll be coming up to us next Monday for a vote to accept the gift.
Yes.
But just want to thank the Newcomers Club and thank Mark Frank for filling out the application. He's really done a fabulous job as the Director of Parks and Rec, and he looks out for the interests of all the residents, children who utilize all the wonderful programs and the summer camp programs, and it's just amazing all that they do. And they also have inside programs at 1750 Washington Street too. So they really utilize that new building, and that they certainly are a board, a commission that makes our town very proud. So thank you very much. And with that, unless I have anyone else that has anything they'd like to say, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
And so we need a roll call. Tina?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
And Mark, aye. Thank you, folks. It is 8:03 p.m. Thank you all for watching, and thank you for all that you do. Have a nice evening. Good night.
Night.